After the apostles had told Jesus how hard they were working to spread the good news of his presence and his plan of salvation, they even told him that they didn't even have time to have anything to eat because people were really coming to hear this good news that they had to bring. And so Jesus, being the good shepherd, recognized that they needed a break. So he said, "Come away to a deserted place all by yourselves and rest for a while." We are human beings, and every now and then we need a good vacation. We need to get our minds off the trials and tribulations and stresses that we're going through wherever we work or play or whatever, and we just need to get away to a deserted place and rest. One of the best things that I enjoy most about a vacation is having the opportunity to finally go to church. I don't get to go to church. I don't get to sit in the pew with my wife and listen to the good news of the resurrection. When I'm here, I'm working. It's always Pastor Grunke, Pastor Grunke. Even when Beth is preaching and I'm sitting in the pew or sitting over there beside her, I'm still on duty. I'm Pastor Grunke. So whenever I go on vacation, I look with great joy for the opportunity to finally get to go to church, to sit in a pew with Ginger, and just to soak up the grace that I need to hear for myself, and to have my soul, my spiritual life rejuvenated. And this is a good thing. A couple of weeks ago, Ginger and I needed to get off to a deserted place, so we went to Nashville, Tennessee. And that was a lovely vacation. And we had planned on going to this particular church on Franklin Pike, and that's also known as Church Row. And the church service started at 9:50. I was excited about being able to go to church and sit with Ginger and just worship, and to listen to the preacher preach about God's grace and forgiveness, and give me some words of encouragement and kind of re-energize me. And so we got up and we got ready, but the greatest joy of that morning was not the worship service where we went, but the journey on the way. When we got out of the neighborhood where we were staying, we turned right on Forest Pike, and we passed one humongous church after another. There was a big Lutheran church, Missouri Synod. There was a huge Presbyterian church. There was a Greek Orthodox church. There was a Church of Christ. There was a Baptist church. It was amazing. But not that these churches were big. That's not what gave me so much joy and excitement. But every single parking lot was plumb full. It was awesome. I thought to myself as a pastor, people, yes, are still interested in what Jesus has to say. We hear so much bad news about the Protestant churches losing members and we're shrinking and all this kind of stuff. Well, the numbers might say one thing, but the parking lots do not lie. They were all full. And these people in Nashville, and in this particular part of town, they had every material thing they could possibly want or need. But they also knew in their lives that without Christ, there would be something huge missing. And so my heart was just filled with great joy to see all the cars in every one of these parking lots and people getting out of the cars to go and hear the good news of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, we got to the church that we were going to. It was up in Brentwood. It was a huge church, Brentwood United Methodist Church. And it was a wonderful church to go to. They greeted us as we went in. But when we got there, people were pouring out of their cars. And it wasn't just older people. It was some young people too. You know, some middle-aged people, some young people, some people with children like you. And it was just great to see the crowds coming out of the early service and the anxiousness of the crowds waiting to go into the middle service. And then when we came out of the middle service, there were crowds there waiting to get into the 11 o'clock service. And I told Ginger, I said, Ginger, this is the greatest day, just to see all these people wanting to hear what Jesus had to say. Now, the service itself was absolutely perfect. The sanctuary was huge, but it was plumb full. The preacher was very eloquent, very nice-looking man. Not as nice-looking as me, but very nice-looking. And he gave a wonderful sermon. Y'all laugh like that was not nice. He gave a sermon on what we all need to hear on a regular basis, a sermon of forgiveness. And the music was great. And people have told us that in Nashville, there is no shortage of really, really good musicians. And they find themselves in churches on Sundays helping out with the music. And I told Ginger that the man who was leading the singing in that particular church was not going to be there very long. He was so good that in that sanctuary there had to be some executive from Music Row who was going to hear this gentleman, and he's going to soon have his own label, because his voice was like the voice of an angel. And he led us in singing, and it was just beautiful. Ginger even bumped me one time, and she said, let him sing. Let him sing. That was ugly, but I forgave her because the sermon was on forgiveness. But anyway, we had a blast going to church, being in church, and going home from church and seeing the crowds of people coming to hear the word of grace. Now, I always have to think through these things. What in God's name were those people looking for? Why did they go there? Why were the parking lots full? What were they expecting to see? What were they expecting to receive? Because when you think about it, church is not a place where we go to get what we need. It's a place where we go where we learn to realize how badly we need what we're getting. Do you see the difference? We don't come here because we want to get something that we might need. We are here to understand from Jesus how badly we need what he has to offer. And when he came to the shore, the place that was deserted was no longer deserted because people had heard where he was going, and they wanted more of what he had to offer. But instead of saying, I came and I'm going to heal all you people, he began to teach them. And so that is what's most important when we come to church. Not to have our needs met, but to learn what it is we are called to do as disciples of Christ and what Jesus' life, death, and resurrection means for all of us. And it means a whole lot more than our physical healing. When Jesus came to the shores, it says in the gospel lesson that they brought to him on mats and sat in the market square all the people who were sick. Is that all that people want from Jesus, is your physical healing? Is that all we come to the church for, is physical healing and to have our needs met? Or does Jesus have something more important to offer than our physical healing? We live on this earth and we live in this world, and bad things happen. Look at what happened in Colorado this week. That town, I don't know if they'll ever get over that. But these things happen in this world. And there are people right now who are bona fide Christians who have diseases that aren't being healed, that are terminal, that's going to cause their life to come to an end. But Jesus is here to tell us there is life beyond the grave. But while we are here, there is something even more valuable than our physical healing, and it is our spiritual faith. And we are here today to let Jesus tell us how valuable it is, his life, his death, and resurrection, to give us and teach us that what he has to offer is exactly what we need. Whenever I go to church, The best thing to do for me is not to have an agenda. Is to let Jesus determine the agenda. Because the most dissatisfied church member in the world is the person who comes to church with an agenda and a shopping list. And then they get disappointed because they find out that this is not Publix. This is not the candy store or whatever. This is the house of God's grace. And He gives us His grace through the Word and the sacrament. And He is our good shepherd. And so we have come here today to let Jesus give us this hour. And in this hour, He is telling us about His love, about His forgiveness, and about our calling to take that love out into the world. You know, all we hear on the news, whether it's TV or radio or whatever, is the bad stuff. But Jesus wants us to open our eyes to a world filled with good things as well. And I'll give you just one small example of the goodness that is everywhere in our world. Ginger and I were going to an event in downtown Atlanta, and we got there before the doors opened. And so we sat in our car, and I turned the radio on, and I left my headlights on, and we were listening to some music. And when I went to start the car up, my battery was dead. And Ginger, sweet as she said, she looked at me and she said, "What are we going to do?" I said, "We're going to get help." She said, "This is Atlanta." I said, "Don't worry about it. Watch me." So I got out of my car, and I took my battery cables, and I hooked them up to my battery. And I took the other end of the battery cables and stood like this beside the road. And this woman in a brand new BMW SUV, that was a beautiful car, young lady, immediately, in less than a minute, makes a U-turn and comes back to me and she says, "Do you need help?" And I said, "No, I'm standing here like this waiting for lightning to strike." No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Not at all. I said, "Yes, ma'am, I do need help, and I really appreciate you stopping." And she said, "Well, what can I do?" I said, "Pull up in front of my car. I'd like to get a jump from you." And she said, "Well, I don't know anything about cars, but you can do whatever you need to do to get going again." So she opened the hood of her car, and I panicked. There was no battery. I said, "I need a jump from your battery." She said, "What does it look like?" And I said, I said, "It's kind of square and everything." But she said, "Well, I helped a guy the other day, and he hooked up something to here and hooked up something to there, and his car started." And so I finally looked around, and they have the battery in a BMW hidden. I don't know what those Germans are thinking. There's nothing to be ashamed of that you have a battery in your car. But anyway, there was a plus and a minus whatever there. And she says, "Just stick it on one of these and stick it down there and turn your engine on. I bet you it'll work." So we stuck something here, we stuck something there, and I turned it on and it worked. But you see, everywhere you go, if we just open our eyes, there are good things happening. There are people who help, people who care, people who want to make your day better. And you and me, we can be part of those people who bring good news to a world filled with bad news. But as for now, this is the invitation by Jesus to all people. This is from Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, and you all know it by heart. "Then Jesus said, 'Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke fits perfectly, and the burden I give to you is light.'" The Lord is our shepherd. Let's follow Him and learn from Him what we need. And He promises that that need will be fulfilled. Amen. Let us stand.